Welcome back to On Production, the podcast where production professionals share their stories and insights. In today's episode, we're excited to chat with Nichole Jensen, a talented professional who spent over a decade producing and working on live events for acts like Imagine Dragons, Nas, Janet Jackson, and Neil Young. From working as a production coordinator and studio coordinator to managing logistics at music festivals, Nichole has built an impressive career in the live events industry. Now, she's taken her wealth of experience and passion for music to the world of commercial insurance, where she specializes in serving the live event space. Nichole, I'm really excited to have you here to explore your journey, discuss the skills you've gained from your time in live event production, and learn how you're using your unique background to help the music industry from an insurance perspective. Welcome.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm excited to be here.
That's awesome. Okay, well, look, let's jump in. Can you tell us about how you got started in the live event industry and what drew you to it?
So what drew me to it was actually going to all the punk shows when I was a teenager and, being at Warped Tour and things where you saw the tour buses around and knowing how much I loved it. And I needed, that was my community. That was where I felt the most understood and at home. And watching all the tour buses leave was the saddest moment of my life. I knew that I had to be there. I had to be a part of it. And, it was always in the back of my mind, but I have a pretty extensive hospitality background. I was a freelance yacht stewardess for a lot of the mid 2000s. And I knew my roommate had worked for Live Nation in the catering department, and I just kept badgering him. I was like, get me in, but the season is so specific. It's during the summer. So I was originally supposed to do dressing rooms, and Live Nation got hold of me before the catering company could and was like, she's going to be a runner. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I was thrilled. I felt like I was finally in the heartbeat, that has started to, I had a good rapport with the production coordinators and the tour managers that I worked with. So they would ask me to come and do all the shows in the Northeast or work their festivals or, eventually come on tour with them. And from there, my career was building, but I started out as a runner, as a dressing room person. I was, cutting shirts that Drake wore on stage, just random things that people needed. I could kind of cater to all of it.
What were some of those first acts and where were you in the world?
I was in Philadelphia and I lived in Philly. My first show was Fish, and all of them turned out to be my lifelong friends. It was where I'm actually about to witness my friend's wedding. And I met her because I was with all of the women in production for Fish, who are still mostly with them. It's an incredible camp. But, they were talking to me like I should know what was up because I should. And they were like, we need lamps for the dressing rooms. We need this. We need you to hang the tapestries. We need you to, just giving me a laundry list of things. And I was like, yeah, okay, all right. So I didn't want to look stupid. So I walked out of there and I was like, girl, I need a girl. I need someone that can help me. And I see this woman, Lindsay, and I was like, girl. And Lindsay is now the one I am I'm not officiating. I'm witnessing in St. Louis. But Lindsay showed me where the lamps were. She worked with catering. Now she is an entertainment attorney and Fish's dressing room person. And opening up another music rehearsal space in the Midwest. But she'll be their in-house counsel too. Anyways, I like to brag on her and all of them. But they just took a shining to me. I don't know. We just connected, and I made friends with the production coordinator and the tour accountant, and they started hiring me for Bader Field in New Jersey, and I would go out and share hotel rooms with random strangers, and it just kind of work my way up, which I mean, I was no stranger to doing that. Like in the yachting community, I once had someone call me and they were like, we can't tell you anything about this, but we need you to fly out to a private island and it's royalty. And, like, we can't tell you anything. You got to take the job or you're going to be a bartender. And I was like, but everyone thought I was going to be human trafficked. It turned out I was on this incredible island in the Waywards in the Bahamas for several months. It was great. So you just say yes to the adventure. And so basically, like, I started working with Fish. They kept getting me gigs with Neil Young and with different Lambda Productions, who was a part of Firefly. And then it kept going. Like, I was then the production coordinator for the first Okeechobee Music Festival. And then I was literally Stephanie Yeager, you're the woman. I love you. She has launched my career. She's Fish's tour accountant and one of my best friends, and just kept getting hired with Neil Young. And then I was his production coordinator and farm girl. I would go on stage before every show and I would sow seeds and I would water fake plants. I was a part of the production as well as running the production with my production manager. So it's just been a whirlwind of referrals and, people that I became friends with. I mean, one of them now has a tour travel company. And I met her when she was with Rihanna and I was the runner. She's like, I love you. Can you do all the shows in the Northeast? So I did. And I moved to LA in 2014, 15. And she was like, we need someone to help with Stones rehearsals. So who am I to say no to that? And they were both the tour managers for it. So I was then the runner for the Stones and also advancing Neil Young's tour. And I became friends with so many people in that party that it sprouted to me going to London and hanging out and like going to their birthday parties and being the studio coordinator in Chiswick in London, where it was just like me and Don Was, the coolest man on earth, and his engineer and the band, and hanging out and just being their glorified errand girl, which is fabulous. And I did that in LA in 2019 before I moved. And 2017, I was kind of off the road for a little bit and just working locally in LA because, I wanted to like have a more of a grounded existence for a minute. And I was at my friend Ramey's house, who is the one with the tour travel company. And she was like, Imagine Dragons need a new production coordinator. And I have a feeling that you and the production manager will be peas in a pod. Like, I just feel it. And her and I have always had this connection where, immediately she was like, I love you. Let's be friends. And we've maintained our friendship and our working relationship, ever since the first day we met when she was on Rihanna. And it turns out me and Matt Miley, the production manager, are peas in a pod. And we've gone around the world with Imagine Dragons and Janet Jackson. And, I then started picking up gigs for another friend I met with Nas. And between that, it kind of all came to a close last year. Obviously the pandemic played a big part in a touring hiatus.
It's interesting, the production industry is such a people business, from speaking with Kevin Lyman, the founder of Warped Tour, speaking with other producers in the indie film world. It is so people-oriented, working together, building trust, and then executing these really complex productions together. I'm curious, we'll dig into kind of your transition into production and live event insurance in a minute. But, as you were building this deep competency of how live events work, specifically music events, Were there any key experiences or roles that you took on while working in live music events that really you felt got you totally up to speed, with your head around how these types of events happen and what it takes to make them successful?
I completely forgot that I also ran a venue in a casino.
Sure.
So that helped. Being a runner from Live Nation, I always knew I wanted to advance. So I spent a lot of time with the production coordinators, the local production management, asking questions and just like being as available to kind of be an earshot to what was going on and how they were settling the tours and the way that they needed to advance the dressing rooms and just all of those little details you kind of listen for and ask questions. And when I was at a casino called Rebel, which is now under new management and something else, but that was in Atlantic City, I had just a crash course in learning about hotels. I saw their contracts. I dealt with taking their contracts, and seeing our deal and basically Xing everything out that wasn't involved, sending it to our legal department, becoming friends with them, our accounting department. And literally, I was working hand in hand with housekeeping, security, transportation. I mean, everyone that made that hotel function was on my team. So it gave me an incredible insight and also I was able to go into the hotel systems and update the rooms when people would call me last minute, but gave me an incredible insight to all of the levels of, competencies that you have to have and working with their VIP programs, their management, their tour management, their agents, the agent's assistants. I mean, it gave me the most incredible education in rock and roll, in music and touring. So that was very helpful. And I was great at Excel. It taught me a lot about organization because I had to be. We had 2 venues and there were always programming and shows going on. So whether it was a full-time Cirque du Soleil production or, go-go dancers in the bar that I had to maintain or Alan Jackson playing or Reba McEntire, it was just such an incredibly diverse learning situation.
Related to learning, over the course of your career in events, were there any interesting challenges that popped up in the various events that were produced and any lessons that you learned from them along the way?
I mean, I was at an EDM festival as a VIP manager, and I mean, there was a weather disaster, which completely, I watched buses just crash down hills in Atlanta. I mean, they couldn't get traction. They couldn't get people out of there. It was such a nail-biting moment of, the VIP program had the owner had to fly in with my sister, actually. We had to send all of our crew just home and be like, I can't help you. I can't bus you out of here. I can't save you. It's basically like, please stick together as a buddy system and get out. I mean, God, I feel terrible even sharing that story. It was horrible when you are just helpless. It's like a disaster. And I want to be the person to manage the expectations and make people feel comforted and save the day. But sometimes you're just as helpless as they are, and the best advice you can give someone is follow the crowd. Please get out, like save yourself. That's horrible. But, I mean, some other hardships, I mean, that are not as dire, but, being a production coordinator for a first-year festival where there were no hotels around the property and our vendors that were building the stages weren't getting priority. So they were and hotels an hour and a half away from the property, and also sharing rooms with pull-out couches. And these people didn't sign up for that. That wasn't in their contract. That's not comfortable. That's not accommodating. And so I essentially took over the hotel person's job as the production coordinator for the festival and managed it, got on the phone with the travel agencies that we were working with and just worked hand in hand to fix the situation. And all of them were so much happier and so much more productive. And, I also ended up getting hired by our crew company for that. They were like, wow, I redid their spreadsheets. It was like, you can't send this to me like this. I can't work like this. And they were like, we respect that. You want to come to work for us? So it's all just kind of being kind, but not afraid to be assertive and helpful. That seemed to get me pretty far.
That's great. I asked the question because I think these types of challenges that you've seen firsthand, everything from like a total loss as a result of inclement weather to just improper organization that needs to be handled by switching out who's leading the operation. Like, those are really interesting lessons that only being on the ground and seeing firsthand what it takes to make a live event successful can you really understand it and grasp it. And I really appreciate you sharing those types of experiences, because I think it leads very nicely into asking you, how the transition from live event production in the music industry to the insurance industry, specifically for live events, what motivated you to do that? And how did your background in these live events prepare you for your current role as an insurance professional?
Well, it's my first real go at sales, and I'm not good at hearing no. So I think you have to have you have to have thick skin and be able to really overcome that word, because as a production coordinator, you don't accept no. There is always a solution. So obviously we discussed my dogs, and I needed some stability in my life. Honestly, after COVID and not having any foundation of being this is, my parents actually told me, get a hypoallergenic dog. We'll watch it while you go on the road. They fell in love with said hypoallergenic dog, got his half-brother. I got the grandmother. She ended up with my parents, and then Romeo still needed a best friend. So we have a 4-dog family now, and I can't leave them with my parents, and I can't leave them. So I'm a homebound mother of 2 canines, and I'm very proud of it. But I guess I'm evading the question. I needed some stability. Touring, honestly, is a 24-hour job where it was starting to affect my mental health and my physical health. I was getting pretty sick, and I needed to stabilize and have something that was always a constant in my world, but I still needed to be in the entertainment space. That was very important to me. So my company has a growing entertainment division, and my boss was just like, my mom worked for the company at the time. He was captivated when he saw the tickets I could get him for a show, and wanted to know if I wanted to work in insurance. So I did. It was something that is so far removed from anything that I'm used to. And it's also good to keep learning, because there's a cap, where when you're on the road, you can only go so far. And you're not getting retirement funds matched. You're not getting health insurance. No one is really there to look out for your long-term career. And this offered me more stability, a 401k, health insurance, something to stimulate my brain.
Nichole, it's really incredible to hear from you about those challenges that you faced at festivals, on the road, and, really seeing firsthand how difficult it can be to produce a great live event. You know, you've transitioned from being on the road and running these really large productions into providing an insurance service to these productions. I'm really curious, how has your background in live events prepared you for your current role as an insurance professional for live events?
I feel like I can empathize with the tours. I actually just had a situation this weekend where I sold the festival a cancellation policy, based on their weather. And the festival is out in a farm, and, they updated me pretty much the day that they were loading in, saying, we've been rained out all week. Our rigs are getting stuck in the mud. We have flooring coming from Atlanta. We don't have the labor to actually put the flooring together. We may need to call it, at least the first day. And it was like, the second I hear that, I'm on the phone with them being like, okay, here's the insurance adjuster's information. Let's start brainstorming ideas on what we can do to bring in labor to, maybe bus people in. What kind of rest areas, parking lots, what can we do to help mitigate this and hopefully salvage the festival? Like, do you have Kubotas with the digging wheels so that you can bring things to the stage? It's like, no one wants that for their client. I mean, no one wants that as a fan, to have to cancel your big weekend plans. I mean, like, that's something you talk about for months, how excited you are to go and see, your favorite artists. So it's like, I think that my understanding can, I've already been on the phone with our risk management team from my company, being like, what can we do to help them? We can't technically look at their contract and give them legal advice, but we can say whose responsibility is certain, like what's, their indemnification, so that we can help them, make suggestions on their contracts and point them in the direction of a counsel, and maybe reword things so that they're less liable, and also look at their contracts and go on the ground and meet and say, this is what we suggest as risk management to do for next year. This is how we can start preventing things, and, maybe load in earlier, or, just kind of brainstorm a little bit about the situation. And I think I understand, from a touring and festival background, the amount of time it takes to really put together an event and how long people are on the ground for multi-stage festivals. I mean, it takes a village.
That's really interesting. I'm curious if you can speak to the role of insurance in the live event industry. Like you just mentioned, like inclement weather, but are there other reasons or other things that you believe are especially important for the live events and music industry from an insurance perspective? Like, what other types of coverages should live event producers be thinking about?
Up until recently, you used to be able to do communicable disease when Zika virus was a thing, and COVID, and then people started taking that out of their policies, which now that's more available. You can start adding it in with less of an expense. Active shooter, unfortunately, it's heartbreaking to have to say that, but there are venues that have had it for years, and it's a huge expense until something happens and you need it. I mean, cancellation for artists, let's see, non-appearance, it's something that they want to have as well as the promoter, because, it's, if they get sick or if a family member gets sick, they're going to need to be able to say, like, I'm covered if I can't show up. Festivals want their artists to have it because they don't want to be liable for them. Like, you need the people's certificates of insurance. Be like, all right, cool. Like, you've got general liability. You have inland marine to protect your equipment. You have workers' comp in case something happens to you. Like, you need to cover yourself. And even artists that have, are putting out music, as much as you copyright your stuff, someone can still take you to court. And you need to have errors and omissions to protect your catalog. And also so that you have money for those lawsuits, because they can bankrupt people.
Absolutely. I think that leads me to another question I'm really curious to ask you, which is like, when a loss occurs, so a talent doesn't show up or a lawsuit occurs, like, what are the common types of claims that you've seen and how much do they cost? Because I think for a lot of folks, in the industry, that's what everyone wants to know. Like, hey, how much is this going to cost me if I don't buy insurance? And what types of claims kind of emerge pretty commonly in the live event sort of space?
You have some artists that notoriously will get on a flight and they don't like the airplane, so they'll get off of it and they won't show up. So you need cancellation and non-appearance. So that it all really depends on what the contract says as far as who's liable. But the claims for, say, errors and omissions, it really depends on how much your business makes. So for a $3 million policy, one of my clients just paid $8,000, which seemed expensive to him. However, he has $3 million if he gets sued, which that it could ruin them and completely destroy everything they've worked so hard for. So, if you are a large-scale touring artist, it can be several $100,000 for your non-appearance and cancellation. But, if you're a starting artist, you can also get a $2,000 general liability policy that covers, $1 million. So it really depends on the scale of your production and your tour and what you need. And some people only do the bare minimum, which is totally fine, as long as you have something to protect you.
I would imagine that, at a live event, you have all kinds of vendors and entities all interacting together. So you've got like the artists organization, the stage vendors, the light vendors, the sound vendors, vendors all over the place, individuals all over the place. And in the event of something horrible happening and a lawsuit occurring, I would imagine that everyone would be named. So then it just makes sense, I would imagine, for everyone to have at the very least a general liability policy. And then I'm guessing as well, like to your point, like, okay, well now you have potentially thousands or tens of thousands of fans who want their money back for a non-appearance, or like the flows of liability seem really interesting. So you mentioned a couple of the types of coverages. So there's like workers' comp, general liability, errors and omissions. Are there other types of coverages very, very specifically to live events that you kind of focus on, and what are they?
It can be hired on non-owned auto. I mean, your cargo policies. Sometimes people go into different countries and have to have certain coverages because they have to have armed cars follow the trucks around, so they don't get heisted.
I mean, what's interesting though, okay, well, this is a good point, right? Like every event sounds like incredibly different. Like the diversity of types of events and risks that emerge are like very varied. And on one hand, like because you've been on productions for a majority of your career, like you just know the types of commonalities that occur in terms of losses. But can you talk to me, Nichole, about the role of effective communication and collaboration between, your event producers and then your insurance team just for mitigating risks? Like, do you use a checklist? Do you use like a different sort of like process for understanding the types of potential losses that could have emerged and then kind of write a policy against that?
Yeah, I mean, we look at loss run history, you know, any situations that have ever occurred at their festival, what could happen, if it's outdoor or indoor, the capacity, the promoter background, this was particularly interesting. The festival I just did, it's their third year, but the first year that they've had cancellation insurance. So sometimes those can be a little bit more challenging because they have no loss run history. Underwriters look at the weather history. I mean, if it's on the beach, like it's definitely going to be higher risk than something indoors at an arena. It depends on the scale, but certainly knowing the layout, their evacuation process, their parking, the general security, what's in their contracts, just to kind of get a full picture of what we're looking at and our risk, to claim ratio.
Super helpful and incredibly interesting. It's really cool that you've had, these really in-depth experiences, both, on sets, at production festivals, at studios, and that you've made this transition then over into the insurance world. I want to pivot a little bit just because you have so much experience with live events. What advice would you give to someone entering the live event industry?
Don't talk badly about other people. Be kind, be inquisitive, know when to leave someone, to walk away from a situation. Trust your instincts. Say yes to gigs, be your own biggest advocate. Find the promoter rep at a venue. Tell them you want to start out as a runner. You want to do catering. You want to be a VIP person. Go to conferences, I mean, I still go to them just because I want to have my finger on the pulse. Like I do Live Production Summit, Polestar. My company sponsors Women of Polestar, and we are currently, in talks of doing more events with them. But try to be involved, even if it's volunteering at first. It's like you're not going to make a ton of money initially, and the hours are intense. But if you love what you're doing, you're going to find so much joy in it. And try and take all of those experiences and ask people to get their email and stay in touch with them and how they got their start. And people will promote you. They'll want you around. If they like your company, they want to be around people that are fun and self-starters and ridiculous, like don't always take yourself so seriously either. Be able to laugh at something because it is hard, and just be able to learn from a mistake and apologize and take accountability, just do your best.
That's amazing. I have some more questions actually, which is great. I'm curious, how important is it for event professionals to understand insurance and risk management in their line of work?
Very. I mean, we're all different quadrants. We have security, we have lighting, audio, rigging, and all of those people work to keep their employees safe and the band and the audiences as safe as possible. So getting together at conferences is so valuable because we can all feed off of each other's knowledge and say like, wow, I've never thought of that. I've never taken it into consideration. Like, why don't we set up phone calls so that we're always working together to make it as cohesive and tight knit? Like we're all on the same team, working together to create this like fabulous utopia for people. It's the heartbeat of something. And understanding risk management and insurance is everything, because no one is going to come to your event. No one will play your event if they suspect that it's a disaster walking in, that you don't have dressing rooms, you don't have catering, you don't have, the right security. I mean, there are some companies that can pick out your stalker from a mile away. To understand that is key to getting the right agents to bring their artists. No artist is going to fly across the country to the world even to be unsafe, because they trust their agents, they trust their management, they trust their production to only put them in situations that will keep them healthy, successful.
Super interesting. Nichole, I'm curious, do you have any thoughts on the future of live events and the role of insurance in the industry? I'm curious, are there any emerging trends or developments you've noticed?
Oh, Cameron, this, I myself am just stepping into this enormous role of an insurance producer. So going to, I go to conferences all the time. That right now in May, I'm going to one about cancellation and contingency. So it's like, there's always something happening. What was I just at? Oh, the Relics Music Conference, which, that's agents. It's a jam band focused conference, but, learning about kids tours. And I mean, that's not so much insurance, but it is, because there are, younger people involved. And the trends in entertainment and VIP and, your proximity to artists, to fans. And I mean, now people are doing like holograms as the artist, and you're taking pictures with them rather than getting up close and personal because of COVID. It's keeping them safe so that they can continue to not cancel their shows and not have to do all these makeup dates, which makeup dates took up a significant amount of last year's programming for a lot of acts. I think, as far as trends, I'm still learning. But I can tell you, I can help. I can be there to tell you regurgitate the things I just learned from cyber. Oh my God. I just went to a cyber conference last week in Atlanta, and I met all kinds of hackers. I learned about the dark web. But I learned about huge risks that can present to people, and like the amounts of planning it must go into a Ticketmaster, a Live Nation, with their security systems in place, and the amount of cyber security you must have to buy, because someone can take over and hold you hostage, or create worms where all of your guests that are buying tickets are also getting ransomware on their computers. It's it's just like enormous, the amount of responsibility all of these companies have to keep people safe. So I think cyber is an absolute must, and a growing trend.
That's super interesting. There's no doubt to anyone listening that the intersection of technology, network technologies into every industry, including live events, are becoming just so intertwined that you need some sort of precautions, insurance, and protocol for managing those types of risks. It's super interesting. It's almost hard to fathom, but it makes sense. Nichole, I'm curious, in your experience, both as a producer and now as an insurance, professional, are there key factors that contribute to a successful event from both a production standpoint and in terms of risk management?
Yeah. I mean, it starts at your stages, your barricade, the credentials that you're providing for on stage, the staff, the artists, the artist compounds, the security that protects the backstage areas, to the outside and the ticketing. And also, things like making sure your artist is not inciting the riot, that they see something and say something, because they can very easily stop a show and say, like, even a lot of people will do it if they see a dangerous pit and be like, stop, like, pick that guy up. You have to have a lot of people want to see your plans, your festival plans, the backstage security. Hopefully it's a reputable vendor, or a promoter that has, that they've done these festivals before. You're not just hopping on the bandwagon of an unknown source because they may not have as much experience, hiring the right security vendors, the right EMTs. You have to have medics. You have to have, so much thought put into where are you going to take this person if they are dehydrated or hyperventilate or have a drug overdose.
Nichole, I'm so thankful that we've had the time to get to talk to each other about event production as well as the risks that occur in production and how insurance professionals such as yourself can help producers in the live events industry kind of manage and thoughtfully operate their productions. I'm curious if you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom for our listeners, particularly those who are aspiring event producers or considering a career in the live event industry.
Hire a strong team. I mean, there's no shame in hiring someone to be your counsel, your what's the word I'm looking for? Consultant. You can hire a consultant that has experience with contracts and vendors and knows their way around, hiring the right crew to put together the staging and work with reputable agents. Go directly to the source, go to the agents, go to the management. You can get the routing from them. You can see the artist availability. You can also see what artists are within your budget. You definitely need a plan on your artist budget and how much you can spare for your staff, your insurance. You don't leave out insurance, whether you need general liability, you need inland marine, you need to get certificates of insurance from your vendors. Do not let an artist play without them. It is detrimental to you if something happens. Yeah, I mean, collect all of the information that you can. God, get your shit together,
Nichole, thanks so much. Where can our listeners find out more about you and your work and how they can get in touch with you if they have any questions or want to discuss insurance for their live events?
Okay, well, my information is N Jensen, Jensen, at higginbotham.com, which is a mouthful, but I work for Higginbotham Insurance. We are a large independent insurance brokerage. We have an incredible entertainment program as well as trucking, cargo, shipping, general liability, small health insurance, retirement. But you can call me 678-904-2596. And I'm based in Nashville, and my main office is in Atlanta, so I'm there pretty often if you ever want to meet. And I frequent Texas quite a bit too, and LA.
That's awesome, Nichole. Well, I hope our listeners get in touch and that if they have any questions about the risks that they need to avoid on their productions and the types of insurances that they can buy if those risks do unfortunately happen, I know that they'll be in good hands chatting with you. Thanks so much for being on production.
Thank you, Cameron.